Are we live? Is week 4 of Hoops and Homers live? Hold on a minute. Wait a second. Hold on. Let's see. Should be going live anytime soon. Don't know why it's not pulling up quite yet. What is going on? Anytime soon. Okay. At long last, it works. Good. Again, guys, I'm the tech guy here too. I'm not just the host. I'm holding everything down. Welcome to another Hoops and Homers show. This is what, week 4 now, I think. We've been at it. No countdown today because we're ready to get right on into business. So thank y'all for showing up. If you're showing up here kind of bright and early on a Saturday, I know some of y'all like your sleep. I like my sleep too. But I like Colorado Rockies and Denver Nuggets news a lot more. And so we've got some pretty interesting stuff to get to this week. If you're new, go ahead, consider subscribing. We are trying to build something over here at 5280 Media, and I'm one of the newer shows on here, and we have tons of fun on this particular show. But the other shows are fun too, especially Rockies Now. If you're a Colorado Rockies fan, go ahead, subscribe over there if you're not subscribed already. But here you get my unfiltered perspective on the Denver Nuggets and the Colorado Rockies. That is our emphasis, hence the name Hoops and Homers. And so today we're going to kick it off like we have been for the first 3 weeks of this show, talking about the Denver Nuggets. Can't speak. That's how excited I am to talk about this week, because this week went a lot better than I thought it would, quite honestly. Obviously, we've discussed over the last few weeks how challenging it's been for the team to play defense without Aaron Gordon and without Christian Brown. That trend has continued throughout this last week, even though the Nuggets went 3-1, gave up a ton of points. But in every single game that they won, each of the 3, they scored at least 130. So the same theme remains. This is the best offense in the league thus far in the year. They're still up there at number 1. And the defense, although it started off top 5, has now slipped back into the middle of the pack, understandably so. Obviously, we've named the injuries as the main reason why that's the case. But aside from that, let's just walk through this week, because it was a pretty interesting week. The Nuggets didn't have a ton of competition on their schedule this week. They played the Suns, they played the Mavericks, they played the Pacers, and they played the Atlanta Hawks. So of those teams, really the only good team is the Atlanta Hawks thus far in the season. The other teams are dealing with some combination of injuries or just poor play. So Saturday evening, the Denver Nuggets took on the Phoenix Suns. They won 130-112. It was an interesting game. Game flow was about what you would expect. Nuggets were heading back out on the road again. And so they've been on an absolute tear on the road recently. I think it's been 8 or 9 in a row that they've won on the road, if I'm not mistaken. They've lost 4 at home in a row, which is not necessarily something you want to see. But on the road, it's good to see that they can go out and get the job done, and they certainly did against the Phoenix Suns on Saturday evening. First quarter was a pretty normal quarter. I think the first half was a pretty normal half, all in all. I think the Nuggets held a lead for most of the first half. Nothing too crazy, no crazy runs. The score was within about 10 points or so. And then third quarter, they just took off, and you got what you got the rest of that game. Nuggets got a pretty massive lead and were able to defeat a Phoenix Suns team that's actually, I think, overperforming expectations so far this year. I think they were 12-9 after that Saturday evening game and 8-4 at home. So you beat a team that was overperforming, but you beat them pretty handily, which is good to see with a pretty injured team as well. Nikola Jokic did not get his triple-double. Missed it by a rebound. Happens way too often these days, unfortunately. Just imagine all the additional triple doubles he would have if he had gotten one more rebound, one more assist. It's a significant amount. Now you could make that argument about a lot of other players up on the top 5 list of triple double scorers of all time, but we're Nuggets fans, and so we like to give Joker that sort of edge in these types of conversations. He played well. 26, 10 assists, 9 rebounds. Not a lot of turnovers. Well, actually, no. In the Suns game, there were a lot of turnovers. The rest of the week, they were able to keep them to a much greater minimum. But 16 turnovers, and they still managed to beat the Suns in that game. Why is that? because they shot the lights out from 3 again. Okay, 22 made threes against the Suns on Saturday evening, 58% from 3. Okay, Spencer Jones, and we talked about Spencer Jones yesterday on last week's show, telling the story of his incredible fit as a role player in this current rotation. He went out and he got 16. That Saturday morning, I said that the Nuggets should use him more, give him some more looks from 3. Went out, was 4 of 6 from 3. So there you go. That's what happens. You listen to the advice that we make, that we present on Hoops and Homers, and you get quality performance from your guys. That's just what happens. So Spencer Jones had a good night. We already talked about Joker. Jamal Murray, 24 points against the Suns, 5 of 10 from 3. And then you got 30 plus points from the bench. Tim Hardaway Jr. hit 7 threes off the bench, had 23 points. So solid win against the Phoenix Suns. That was a win that we expected to happen. We're not too surprised at that result. So that was a solid game on Saturday evening. Then the Nuggets came back home. The Altitude Sports crew, a week or so ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, showed this graphic on one of the broadcasts showing all the travel that the Nuggets would be doing over these next few weeks. And so this is just part of it. They went to Phoenix, came back home to Denver to play Dallas. Then they went to, where'd they go to? They went to Indiana. Then they went all the way down south to Atlanta. Now I think this upcoming week they're coming somewhere back west. So yeah, lots of travel. But the Nuggets came back home on Monday evening against the Mavericks. Mavericks are not a good team to start the year. They obviously have Cooper Flagg. They have Anthony Davis. They have some other good role players, I guess, at this point in their career, like Klay Thompson, who's coming off the bench for some reason. I guess he's at that point in his career, like I kind of just said. D'Angelo Russell. And you figured that this should be a game the Nuggets should win, even though they hadn't been playing well at home the last few weeks. And for the most part, this was a pretty good game for the Nuggets in the first half. Okay, it was pretty competitive through the first quarter, but towards the end of the first quarter and early second quarter, through like the 6-minute mark in the second quarter, Nuggets were able to build a solid double-digit lead. I think the Nuggets were up by about 14 with 6 minutes left in the half. And for whatever reason, the Mavericks turned that 14-point lead into a 1-point halftime lead for themselves. Don't really know how that happened. They started knocking down a lot more of their shots. Ryan Nembhard, brother of Andrew Nembhard from the Pacers, I believe, went absolutely off. I think I didn't know that he had this in him. I think he's a rookie, and so he wasn't a first-round pick as far as I'm aware. And he's not necessarily the most overwhelming guard from a size perspective, but he's fast and he knocks down his shots. So the Nuggets were not prepared for that. They went into the second half down by a point. The third quarter was pretty competitive. It was pretty close. The teams kind of went back and forth, but I think the Nuggets ended up getting their lead back going into the fourth quarter. Early in the fourth quarter, they were up by about 5. And so you were kind of hoping that the team would be able to hold it down just for the last quarter, which is something they hadn't been able to do at home in their last 3 home games. Wasn't able to happen. They were not able to keep that lead. And the Mavericks actually ended up building a pretty solid lead in the end of that game. And at one point in the last minute and a half or so, we're up by 10. And they won by 10, 131-121. Like I said, Ryan Nembhard, 28 points, 4 of 5 from 3, 12 of 14 from the field. Like this has been a trend for the Nuggets over the last week or so, giving up these incredible games to guys who are just role players on their team. And that trend continued, which is unfortunate to see. Cooper Flagg had a pretty good game. Credit to him. First overall pick. I think he's 18 years old. So played pretty solidly in this game. 24 points, 8 rebounds. Anthony Davis had 30 points, 2 of 4 from 3. So it's not like the Mavericks did incredibly. I mean, they shot 52% from 3. They made 16 threes. Nuggets did not shoot well from 3 against the Mavericks in this game. 12 made threes in total on 32% shooting. So didn't really get the contribution you needed to keep up with the Mavericks, considering that you were not playing good enough defense to shut their offense down. Obviously, 121 points, a lot of points. Like we've said multiple times on this show thus far, the Nuggets are pretty much a guaranteed 120 point per night team. And so the defense is really going to be the make or break when this team is healthy. They have that good defense, but since they're not healthy right now, they're kind of just struggling in those losses that they have to keep up with the other team's offensive firepower. Even though the Nuggets have been, like I said, outperforming, I think even from 3-point range, that's why it helps to go out and get a Tim Hardaway Jr., a Cam Johnson, who have both been playing exceptionally well, all things considered, over the last few weeks. And in the case of Tim Hardaway Jr., over the course of this whole season, as the team's sixth man, first guy off the bench. So that was an unfortunate loss Monday evening against the Mavericks. 4 straight home losses for the Nuggets. Something's got to change going forward in that regard, because for whatever reason, the Nuggets in their last few games at home during this losing streak, they've not been able to play their normal rhythmic type of game. Usually they're not a good second quarter team and they're a good third quarter team, and that allows them to finish out the game on a strong note. But it feels like in a lot of these last home games that they've played, they've kind of messed with their rhythm. They get up pretty big earlier in the game, maybe second, third quarter, a little bit in the third quarter, mostly second quarter, and they're unable to hold it on. They're unable to hold on to their lead, and whatever it is, the fatigue, the fact that they're likely playing teams that are younger than them, since the Nuggets are the 5th oldest team in the league, whatever it might be, they're just not able to hold on to those leads when they build them early. So they need to get back into their normal rhythm of game flow. Obviously, Coach Adelman would like the team to play a complete 60-minute game or 48-minute game. 60-minute game. It's not football. I have Broncos on my brain. Sorry. It's been an exciting football season, even though I don't talk about football much on this podcast, if at all. He would like the team to play a full 48 minutes, but you have to deal with the ebbs and flows of your team, right? And so the Nuggets formula for winning games at home and for the most part away from home has generally been come out in the first quarter, starters play solidly. The first bench unit comes in and they give up the lead in the second quarter. The starters manage to keep the game close, and the halftime score is usually within 5 points or so. Then the third quarter, the team goes absolutely off. Okay, starters play well again, pretty much from the outset. The bench comes in with a little bit more confidence, a little bit more chemistry for whatever reason. At that point in the game, they've adjusted, and they don't blow the lead that the starters build for them at that point, and then they hold on in the fourth quarter. And so that really is the game flow the Nuggets need to get into. That's the game flow they've had success with this season. And that's not the game flow they've had in the games that they've lost, especially at home over the last week or two. So tough loss to the Mavericks on Monday evening. And they went back out on the road, which is their happy spot, again, over the last few weeks, to Indiana. Indiana should be a much better team than they are, but they are injured to heck. So that was another game that we went into last week with the expectation of winning. Okay. 4-17 Pacers team going into that game, and the Nuggets made it 4-18. Okay. Nuggets pretty easily handled the Pacers, especially in the second half of this game. They won this game 135-120. Jamal Murray had an insane game. He had a postseason playoff Jamal Murray type of game. 52 points. 10 of 11 from 3. All right. So he channeled his inner 2023 and bubble Jamal Murray in this game, which is good to see. That actually made the Nuggets one of 3 teams all time to have 3 50-point scorers, 3 different 50-point scorers in the same season. I think the only other 2 teams were some Lakers team from the 70s and the Golden State Warriors team from sometime in the late 2010s. I think it was the 2018 Golden State Warriors team. And so that's a pretty interesting list to be on, because at least that Warriors team was really good. Not sure about that Lakers team. I'd assume they probably were. I know the Lakers have a lot of championships historically. So Nuggets putting themselves in that category with Jamal's 50-point game on Wednesday is pretty interesting, because it's the season is not even halfway done. It's barely a quarter of the way done, and we already have reached that 3 50-point scorer mark. Pretty interesting sign. If you've been around this podcast for the last few weeks, you'll know that I have said that this Nuggets team will win the championship this year if they can stay healthy. And so this might be another little sign that that could be the case, considering that particular unique stat and fun fact. But Jamal Murray carried against the Pacers on Wednesday evening, 135 points. Again, lots and lots of scoring from this team in their wins. They've had 130 points per game in each of the wins that they had last week. This was their highest scoring output. In addition to Jamal's 50-point game, you had Joker with 24, 13 assists, missed the triple-double by 2 rebounds again. Not sure who's taking his rebounds, but if you're listening to this and you're taking his rebounds, please stop. Okay, so 24 from Jokic, 11 from Peyton Watson. Okay, Spencer Jones, by the way, had a career night against the Mavericks. Completely forgot to mention that. We'll mention that when we talk about the players individually in a few minutes. But 28 points from Spencer Jones on Monday evening. Pacers game on Wednesday evening, he drops a whopping 1 point. So they didn't need him to drop more than 1 point in this game. Would have been nice for him to get some more looks. He only got 1 field goal attempt in 17 minutes. I think he might have actually gotten a little bit injured actually in this Pacers game at some point, because I remember he was on the injury report for the Hawks game on Friday evening. So maybe that's why he didn't play as many minutes and get more points. But you got 14 from Bruce Brown off the bench, 11 from Tim Hardaway, and that was a pretty solid win for this team. But Jamal easily stole the show in this game. Yeah, 52 points. 52 points. Make that man an all-star this year. That's all I have to say about this game at this point. So that was a solid win on Wednesday evening. Again, that Pacers team is not healthy, so that's pretty expected, but it's good that they went out and they were able to dominate. 15-point win. Friday evening's game was easily the game of the week. Maybe in the whole NBA. I don't know if there were any crazier games in the NBA, but especially for the Denver Nuggets, because this game, it was absolutely insane. It was just wild. Okay. So Nuggets ended up winning 134-133 against a pretty good Hawks team this year. They're 13-11 now, but they're in good playoff seeding in an Eastern Conference that's generally weaker than the Western Conference, especially given that there are a lot of stars in the Eastern Conference that are not healthy right now and will not be healthy for the rest of this season. So the Hawks have been pretty competitive, and they're a pretty good team. They've got some good young guys. Jalen Johnson, 21 points. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, 30 points. So thankful he's not on the Timberwolves anymore. All right, that guy's a starting caliber guard, and he was coming off of that Timberwolves team's bench. Okay, it was not fun. It might be one of the reasons why we've been able to beat the Timberwolves actually this season. You don't have that guy coming off the bench for them anymore. He had a good game. Kristaps Porzingis comes off the bench for the Hawks. Kind of weird, but I'm not one to judge other people's teams. 25 points. And so this is a pretty solid Hawks team. They gave us a run for our money. In fact, so much so that in the first half, they were up by like 19, 20 points. Okay, they built a big lead early. They were trying to do their best copy and paste of the Chicago Bulls when they came to Denver a few weeks ago and just couldn't miss from 3. That was the Atlanta Hawks in the first half. Just 3 after 3 after 3. They made 13 threes in the first half of yesterday evening's game. And they built a solid lead against the Nuggets going into halftime. Maintained a double-digit lead pretty much the entire first half. Nuggets just kind of looked a little bit out of rhythm. They weren't knocking their shots down. Starters came out flat. Bench didn't really help much in that regard, although they might have played a little bit better at certain stretches of that second quarter. Anyway, going into the second half, you're kind of just hoping that the Nuggets could make it close and not get embarrassed by this Atlanta Hawks team and not end their road winning streak. But whatever was said at halftime, whatever halftime speech was given by whoever it was, it works. And the Nuggets came out on absolute fire in the second half and knocked down pretty much every 3 that they took. Everyone was knocking everything in. I think Nikola Jokic didn't miss a single shot, and he took a lot more shots in the third quarter of yesterday's game. I don't think he missed a shot in the third quarter, and if he did, he missed it way late in the third quarter. So he had a terrible first half. It was like 4 of 15 from the field in the first half. One of the broadcasters said he couldn't have thrown a pea in the ocean in the first half. Wasn't the case in the third quarter. So everything was clicking on all cylinders in the third quarter, and the Nuggets slowly chopped away at a massive Atlanta Hawks lead to the point where in the fourth quarter, they continued that momentum. They eventually took the lead. And at one point in time, with like 4 minutes left in that game, they were up by 10. So that's where it kind of got a little bit concerning again, because you had a double-digit lead. You flipped a 19-point deficit into a 10-point lead. And then all of a sudden, at the end of the game, the Hawks had a chance to tie. And thankfully, they didn't. Thankfully, they were able to, or the Nuggets were able to play some solid defense down the stretch. They had a lot of steals in this game. Nuggets had 9 steals in this game. That was pretty crazy to see. But it was a solid win. Okay. Made 16 threes, shot 43% from 3. So again, there's that theme over the last week, right? Without the defensive support, the Nuggets need to be more reliant on the 3 ball and knocking in their threes. And in each of their wins, they did exactly that. So that was really solid to see. Jamal made 4 threes. Cam Johnson made 4 threes. Tim Hardaway made 4 threes. So really good to see that the Nuggets are able to, at least on the road, outshoot some of these teams when their defense is not playing up to its maximum potential, especially considering the current injury situation. But that was a crazy game. Crazy comeback win for the Denver Nuggets yesterday evening, and that was the Nuggets week. Okay, that was the Nuggets week in review. It's a solid week. We're going to walk through each of the 9 players who are getting the most playing time over the last few weeks and just generally see how they're doing at this point in the year. Jamal Murray, got to start there, averaging 25, 5, and 7 on 50% shooting from the field. Okay, that's really good. That's all-star caliber good. And so he hasn't done anything to change what we said last week, which is that he should be an all-star this year, assuming he stays healthy by that point in the season. Okay, what's he shooting from 3? He's shooting 46% from 3. Okay, on a team that's top 4 in the Western Conference as of today. That's insane. Okay, that is just insane. All right, so he is on an absolute pace to make his first all-star team in his career, and that's an absolutely amazing thing to see. If anyone deserves it, it is Jamal Murray. Peyton Watson still kind of holding it down in place of Christian Brown. 10 points per game, 5 rebounds, 2 assists, 49% shooting from the field. And from 3, he's down to 37%, down a few ticks. Not too bad. That's still pretty good for a guy who shoots 34% from the field or from 3-point range in his career. So he continues to play solid defense. He's giving you... What is he giving you? He's giving you pretty much a block a game. Sometimes he'll give you multiple steals a game, but he's playing pretty well in place of Christian Brown. Not the same offensive contribution because he's not as good of a slasher as Christian Brown is, but he's filling in solidly in that 2-guard spot in Christian Brown's absence. Spencer Jones, the stats don't show it, but he's actually been one of the most exciting and engaging guys to watch on this team over the last few weeks since being thrown into the starting lineup. 4 points per game, 2 rebounds, and an assist per game is not really going to wow you, but he is shooting 57% from the field, and from 3, 44%. So again, keep giving Spencer the ball, man. He's absolutely amazing on defense. Obviously, we've talked about that multiple times, but offensively, he's good at pretty much everything that the Nuggets are building their identity around. Pretty much everything. He's a great slasher, great cutter. He's good at knocking down his threes, especially from the corner. When the kick out comes, he's a perfect fit in this rotation. And now, obviously, he hasn't been in the rotation for a substantial amount of time yet. So there are a few chemistry-related things that he is working on. He's not necessarily always on the same page with other guys. It's led to a few turnovers here and there that look a little bit awkward. But that's all stuff that comes with just building more confidence and a more clear defined role in the rotation. And so obviously he's not going to be the starting small forward for this team when everyone's healthy, but I do think he's earned himself rotational minutes when this team is fully healthy. He should be coming off the bench. He should be one of the 4 or 5, I guess, guys coming off the bench on a nightly basis because he's absolutely an incredible fit in this rotation. Cameron Johnson, 11 points per game, 3 rebounds, 2 assists, 46% from the field and 40% from 3. Look, that's what you paid for, right? Maybe you paid for a few more points per game. Maybe you paid for about 15 or 16 points per game. But based on what you've gotten out of Tim Hardaway, who we'll talk about in a few minutes, I'm not really going to complain about 11 points per game from Cam Johnson on this type of efficiency. Exactly the role player the Denver Nuggets need. This is a guy who's going to space the floor. He's found out how to do that a lot more effectively over the last few weeks, and he's knocking in more of his shots. So, and that's from everywhere, right? Okay, he's knocked down some pretty deep threes. I might actually think that he's a better three-point shooter the farther away he gets from the three-point line. He's shooting with a lot more confidence. He's playing high-quality defense. And so this is exactly what you paid for if you're the Denver Nuggets when you sent Michael Porter Jr. to Brooklyn and brought him back in that deal. So good stuff from Cameron Johnson. Nikola Jokic, what do you really need to say, man? 29 points per game, 12 rebounds, 11 assists, 61% from the field, 41% from 3. I mean, that's your MVP so far this year. That's your MVP over the last 5 years. Okay. But this season in particular is his MVP season again. This should be his 4th MVP season. He's going to continue keeping up this efficiency. He's going to continue playing really solid defense, actually. He's leading the league in steals. He averages 1.4 steals per game. I mean, again, the top 10 conversation should have Nikola Jokic in it at this point in time. He's not top 5. I've seen some people in some comment sections who might be a little bit too overhyped on Nikola Jokic. They're saying, oh, he's top 5 all time. No, not yet. You need some rings for that. You need some more longevity for that. But he's definitely on his way to being top 5 all time if he continues to keep this type of productivity up and keep this Nuggets team that's missing its 2 best defenders competent in a highly challenging Western Conference. So Joker is the early season MVP of the league, and he's definitely the most consistent and best player on the Nuggets, as he has been for like the last several years. Okay, Tim Hardaway Jr., 12 points per game, 2 rebounds, 2 assists, 46% from the field and 42% from 3. He has continued to impress. Okay, feels like he's not just on an early season hot streak. You know, you kind of feel that with some guys where you're seeing this guy who's exceeding your expectations for performance, and then later on in the year he kind of cools off significantly, and you're like, wait a second, what happened? It doesn't feel that way with Tim Hardaway Jr. Feels like he knows his role, and he goes out every evening and unashamedly performs his role. Just knocking down threes, jacking up threes, coming off the pick and roll, hitting those little mid ranges. Not necessarily the biggest slasher based on what I've seen, which is not necessarily something he has to be when you have guys like Spencer Jones, when you have guys like a Cam Johnson, when you have guys like Christian Brown when he's healthy, right? So that's not an issue. It is his job to knock down threes. That's what he's paid for. He's paid to help this team shoot threes and play solid defense. He continues to play solid defense, and he continues to knock down his threes, and he continues to get open 3-point looks. That's how you know the Denver Nuggets offense is absolutely elite. You have a guy, he comes off the bench, you know it on the scouting report, it's his one job to knock down threes, and yet he's still shooting in the low 40s from 3 and just getting good looks to do so continually. So Tim Hardaway Jr. continues to impress. Bruce Brown, 7 points per game, 4 rebounds, 2 assists, 43% from the field, only 34% from 3. But against the Hawks yesterday evening, he knocked down some pretty big ones. Bruce is a clutch performer. Okay. And that's kind of what he was in 2023 as well. At this point in his career, after the injuries he's had the last few seasons, he's definitely lacking some of that explosiveness offensively and defensively. But at the end of the day, I mean, he's clutch. And so that's something you can expect of Bruce Brown. You're not going to expect incredible performance from him at this point in his career, but you're going to expect effort. You're going to expect energy. You're going to expect him getting in the middle of passing lanes defensively, and you're going to expect him to knock down threes when you need him to. Not all the time, but when it matters most. So he's been playing solidly off the bench. Zeke Naji has gotten some more playing time over the last few games, actually, for the Denver Nuggets, which is good to see. He always, again, to me, feels like he's out of rhythm, but you do need to get him some playing time. He's one of the highest paid players on this roster. And for the most part, when the team is healthy, he is a DNP. He does not play. And that's for good reason. So it's been good that he's gotten the reps he's gotten over the last few weeks with all the injuries, because maybe he can show some signs of progress and fitting into the team chemistry a little bit better. But at this point in the season, he's averaging 2 points per game, 2 rebounds, pretty much 0 assists, 55% from the field, 27% from 3. So again, not incredible, but he'll give you energy and effort. He's playing a little bit better defensively. He's putting himself in better positions to get rebounds. So it seems like he's improving. He's slowly improving, but he's still not playing incredibly well. So it's good that he's holding it down off the bench in the limited minutes that he's been getting off the bench, really only about 8 or 9 a game. And all you can do is hope that he continues to develop in the limited time that he will have before the team gets healthy and he goes back to riding the bench pretty much. Jonas Valanciunas, last role player that we have to discuss. 8 points per game, 5 rebounds, an assist, 58% from the field, 22% from 3. That's fine. Big Val's not out there to knock down threes, although he can knock down threes, which is really cool to see. He's been absolutely outstanding in the paint. Okay, when he gets that one-on-one ISO with a guy who's also a center, but who's likely smaller than him because he's so huge, he's really good at just finishing over people with what seems like incredible ease. He's also a really solid rebounding presence down there and a defensive presence down there. So, and he's also been able to, I guess, operate the offense kind of from the top of the arc, which is not necessarily something I thought he'd adapt to easily, but he's done it decently well. Okay, he's no Nikola Jokic, but he's really solid all around in that regard. Top of the arc, facing off one-on-one against people in the paint, and then in there with his big body, getting rebounds, getting blocks, solid stuff from the guy. So that is the Nuggets rotation at this point in the season. This upcoming week will be a pretty interesting one. We can go take a look and see who the Nuggets are playing this week. I think they only have 2 games scheduled. This upcoming week, at least, is going to be NBA Cup week. And so all the focus, for the most part, is going to be on those games. So the Nuggets only have 2 games this week. Their first game is tomorrow at Charlotte, and then their second game is on Thursday at Sacramento. Again, Sacramento, really? For like the 4th time in the first 2 months of the season. Don't understand it. But that's what happens with this whole NBA Cup scheduling stuff. Because if the Nuggets had made the NBA Cup, they would have had to shift some other games around on the schedule. And so that's why you kind of see the Nuggets playing teams like the Rockets and the Kings so much these first few months, is because of NBA Cup stuff. But Hornets, Kings, those are 2 wins. Okay, I should be coming back here next Saturday morning and talking about how the Nuggets continued their road winning streak against 2 teams that are really bad to start the year. And that's just the way it should be. Okay, I don't really have to say anything else about that. Nuggets should be 2-0 next time we come back and we talk about them after this week. And I'm going to say that the Hornets game is a win of at least 15, and I'm going to say that the Kings game is a win of between 5 and 10 points. Okay, I'm going to say the Nuggets knock down at least 15 threes in each. I'm going to say that Spencer Jones has at least 1 15-point game in either of those 2. Okay, those are my 3 predictions for the upcoming week. Okay, alrighty. That is the Nuggets week in review and the Nuggets week looking ahead. now it's time to talk about the Colorado Rockies. Now, before we get into their hiring of a new general manager, very exciting stuff, there were a few transactions that happened over the week that we might as well touch on as well. Okay. First involved a pair of minor league free agent signings. Rockies signed John Brebbia, reliever, to a minor league contract, and our boy Nicky Lopez to a minor league contract. Both get invites to spring training. We talked about Nicky Lopez on the very first show of Hoops and Homers. I think I intended to talk about him when I was talking about building out a Rockies team from a depth perspective in 2026. I think he made that conversation. So I was excited to see the Rockies actually went out and signed him. Thankfully, not to a major league contract. He hasn't been a major league contract worthy guy since 2021 when he actually had an over 4 WAR and played pretty well offensively and defensively for the Royals. So good to see that they got him on a minor league contract. I don't expect him to make the team out of spring training, but you never know, man. He's not the greatest offensive bat right now, but Coors Field has a way of changing that for certain guys. Mickey Moniak is the easiest example of that in recent history. Okay. Struggling offensive guys come to Coors Field, come to Colorado, and they become better hitters. So maybe that would turn around for Nicky if he somehow made the opening day 26-man roster, but he's a solid defender, and that's a good thing to see. Need solid defense with the Colorado Rockies at Coors Field. You just do. Okay. And so he's a solid depth piece waiting in AAA when injuries happen, especially given the lack of depth that the Rockies have right now at the position with pretty much just Ryan Ritter and Adael Amador manning that position at the moment. So good depth signing of Nicky Lopez and John Brebbia. Okay. John Brebbia was a plus reliever with the St. Louis Cardinals in the late 2010s. Okay. He was okay with the Giants in 2022, 2023. Those were his last 2 years where he was an above average major league reliever. Last few seasons, he has not been very good. Okay. So another guy here that the Rockies are going to bring in to see if he can potentially compete for a bullpen spot. Not necessarily sure if they signed him to that contract with the intention of having him legitimately compete for that spot. Obviously, he's going to get an invite to spring training, but I think he's definitely a depth piece. With Nicky Lopez, you can see Nicky maybe making the team as that sort of veteran bench guy who can go out, play solid defense, bat in the 9-hole on every third game of the series that you play. But Brebbia is definitely more of a depth piece for when guys in the bullpen get hurt and we need someone to be promoted from AAA. Okay. And I don't have an issue with him being in that role. I looked at his pitch mixes. They all seem to fit the mold that I think would succeed most at Coors Field. So 2 solid signings there to minor league contracts with invites to spring training in John Brebbia and Nicky Lopez. Okay. Those were the first 2 transactions that happened this week. But there were some transactions that happened yesterday, I believe, that are a bit interesting. Okay. One of them is more interesting than the other one, but we'll touch on both of them, obviously, because they both happened. The one that makes more sense here between these two is the Rockies releasing Anthony Molina. Okay. They removed him from the 40-man roster, and I believe he was picked up by the Atlanta Braves. Okay. So funny enough, the Braves have now picked up Ryan Rollison and Anthony Molina, really our only 2 long relievers that might have been in the mix for a long relief role based on the current roster construction in 2026. That's kind of funny. But if you'll remember back to the very first episode of Hoops and Homers, when I was building a 2026 Colorado Rockies roster and I needed to clear up some space to go out and make some free agent signings, Molina was one of the 4 guys that I said I'd have no issue removing. Okay. He was a Rule 5 pick of the Rockies in 2023. And Lord knows why, because in 2023 with Durham, he wasn't really good. Okay. Durham is the AAA team for the Tampa Bay Rays, I believe. Okay. He wasn't good in AA or AAA that season. Those were the 2 levels he played at in the minor leagues. And he had a 4.37 ERA in AAA and a 4.61 ERA in AA. And he wasn't a high strikeout guy at either level. So why the Colorado Rockies decided that they would draft that guy in the Rule 5 draft, meaning he had to be on their 40-man roster or their 26-man roster in 2024, didn't really make much sense. Okay, so it was an unfortunate circumstance for Molina. Was not good in 2024 with the Rockies. Had an ERA over 6. Had an ERA over 6 in Albuquerque in 2025, and an ERA over 7 in the limited time he did get with the Rockies in 2025. So him being released makes perfect sense to clear up space on the 40-man roster. The second move doesn't make as much sense. Okay, the second move was to release Drew Romo from the 40-man roster. And Drew Romo was actually picked up off waivers by the Baltimore Orioles. Okay, this is something that I think some Rockies fans don't necessarily understand. I saw in some comment sections that there were some Rockies fans who were confused why the Orioles would sign a guy like Romo because they don't seem to, quote unquote, need catching help. But based on what I've heard from the Baltimore Orioles side of things, Adley Rutschman is significantly underperforming, especially in 2025. And so they kind of mixed in with the fact that he'd also been injured a decent amount in 2025. They've been looking for some catching depth. And so when a guy like Drew Romo, who's a young guy who was one of the top 3 Rockies prospects as recently as several years ago, when a guy like that comes available, it would make sense for a team like the Orioles to go out and pick him up. So that's what happened. And that's kind of unfortunate for a few reasons. Number one, obviously a few years ago, we as Rockies fans were very expectant and excited that Drew Romo could potentially become the catcher of the future for this team. Obviously, it didn't happen, and Hunter Goodman ended up showing out in a way that was also unexpected in 2025. So franchise catcher seems to be under lock at the moment. But I mean, at the end of the day, man, to release a guy like Romo, what it seems to show is that the current front office really wants him to go succeed in a role that actually maximizes his potential in a different opportunity where he'll get more regular playing time. We did talk about this when we were doing our 2026 Rockies roster rebuild. Hunter Goodman is the starting catcher on this team. Okay, so backup catcher is the position that would be available for Romo to compete for, but he's competing against a guy like Braxton Fulford, who has a broader skill set than Romo does. Okay, Fulford is a catcher who's actually pretty fast, pretty high up in sprint speed, believe it or not. He's just a fast guy. He's an okay defender, and he has good offensive potential. Dude tore it up in AAA last year. Braxton Fulford. So Braxton obviously has the leg up. If you're thinking about this from a competitive perspective with Romo still on the roster, Braxton Fulford has the leg up in the backup catcher competition. But we obviously want the Rockies to go out and sign a veteran catcher because it's always nice to have a more experienced guy on the team. For that reason, can maybe help mentor a Hunter Goodman defensively and help the Colorado Rockies pitching staff develop and sequence pitches better. It's always good to have a veteran catcher on your team. And so with that situation kind of considered, it would make sense that the current front office, when they're looking at the 40-man roster, sees a guy like Drew Romo and says, this guy had lots of potential. In the few opportunities he had, he didn't really show that he was ready to compete at the major league level. And he's also dealt with some injuries over the last year or so. And so for that reason, we're going to let him go find greener pastures since he's probably not going to be the guy of the future on this team. Okay. And he's right about at that age and that point in his development where he needs that opportunity. So it was unfortunate to see Drew Romo go, but like I said, it's an understandable move. And so that was the Rockies' week from a transactions perspective. Okay. 4 moves were made. Now the Rockies have 2 available spots on their 40-man roster, which is interesting. I doubt that they cleared out that space to add in-house prospects to the 40-man roster. And I doubt that they're going to leave those 2 spots open until spring training and through spring training. Okay. Which makes me excited about what potentially Paul DePodesta and new general manager Josh Burns might have up their sleeve going into the winter meetings this upcoming week. Okay. Winter meetings are a big time where moves are made, trades are made, free agents are signed. Maybe the Rockies are going to make a move in the next week or so. That's something we're definitely going to keep our eye on now that there are 2 spots open on the 40-man roster. But aside from transactions, we just mentioned the guy's name. Josh Burns is the new general manager of the Colorado Rockies. And so just a general overview, if you haven't heard much about this guy yet, Josh Burns actually started off his MLB career in the front office in the late 90s with the Cleveland Guardians and with Paul DePodesta for a few years. So there's a connection there. This is not Paul just looking out and seeing a guy who's had some recent success and saying to himself, yeah, let me just bring that guy in because of the role he currently has on this current team. We'll get to that in a second. He actually has a connection with this guy that goes back about 30 years. So they know each other. After that, Burns actually came to Colorado. He was an assistant GM with the Colorado Rockies in the late 90s, early 2000s with Dan O'Dowd. Obviously, that wasn't an incredible period of time for the Colorado Rockies. A lot of big swings and misses from a free agency perspective, from a performance perspective. Then he actually went to become an assistant general manager with the Boston Red Sox and was an assistant GM with the Red Sox in 2004 when they won the World Series for the first time in decades. Okay. Had success there. That earned him a full-time general manager job with the Arizona Diamondbacks. He was there for about 5 seasons, only had 2 winning seasons. One of those winning seasons was the season in 2007, where the Colorado Rockies knocked out the Arizona Diamondbacks to go on to the World Series, I believe it was. That was the ALCS. Don't quite remember. I was a wee little child. Okay. Went on to become the general manager of the Padres after that and didn't really have tons of success there. Pretty mid San Diego Padres teams under his leadership. But then he went to the Los Angeles Dodgers. And over the last 10 years, he's been pretty much the 3rd highest ranking official in the Dodgers front office. Now, based on what I've heard, this Dodgers front office is pretty top heavy. Okay, so Andrew Friedman is the guy who's the president of baseball operations for that team. He's running the show. And so Josh Burns wasn't up here making the final decisions on a lot of these massive things that contributed to the Dodgers becoming a team that's won 3 World Series in the last 5-6 years. But he was definitely a massive part of it. Okay, he was the senior vice president of baseball operations for the team. Okay. So that's nothing to scoff at, especially when you're talking about the Los Angeles Dodgers. Now, that's the guy's resume. He's obviously coming to Colorado, which is pretty much the exact opposite situation that he had in LA. So what can you expect from a guy who is coming from a team that has a massive budget to go out and sign free agents in a large market, coming to a small market that doesn't have that type of budget and that is in complete disarray compared to the Dodgers, who, like I said, won 3 World Series in the last 5-6 years? Well, obviously, he's going to have to change his perspective on a few things. And obviously, when he had discussions with Paul DePodesta about taking this role, he knows that that is the expectation. Okay. But there's a reason to be excited about this, aside from the fact that he's coming from an organization that is a winning organization with a solid culture. If you think about the way that the Dodgers farm system contributed to their success over the last few seasons, it's pretty significant. Okay, this is a farm system that produced guys like Corey Seager, Cody Bellinger, Alex Verdugo. Okay, this is a farm system that works. Okay. Now, one of the reasons the Dodgers farm system works, based on what I've seen, is that they do a lot of investing. Okay, they spend a lot of money, not just on the major league team, but on the minor league operations. Okay, they're getting top tier chefs, top tier trainers. They are making their minor leaguers' lives as easy as they possibly can so that these guys can go out and be the best players they possibly can. Okay, that's not something the Colorado Rockies are going to have the ability to do. But what is interesting is that The Dodgers draft and development system over the last few years has centered heavily, at least from a hitter's perspective, on getting guys who are good at plate discipline and good at making contact. Okay. Those are two things that the Colorado Rockies absolutely need. And if they were to find the right guys who fit that mold, would absolutely benefit from. Okay. And Josh Burns was leading that operation. Josh Burns is leading the operation that went out to find these guys in the latter rounds of the MLB draft and finding pretty much diamonds in the rough. Okay. That's very encouraging because it shows that beyond the resources that he had to work with, he's looking and evaluating certain players and evaluating them well. Obviously, developing those players played a key part in guys like Corey Seager, Cody Bellinger turning into the guys that they turned into. But nonetheless, you still have to identify guys who can thrive in your development process. And that's something that Josh Burns was at the forefront of for the last 10 years in the Los Angeles Dodgers organization. So looking for hitters that fit that mold, very exciting. From a pitching perspective, don't necessarily know what they were looking for, but it's going to change significantly here. Seems like Paul DePodesta has his own ideas of the type of pitchers that he wants here at Coors Field and the guys that can succeed. So what they're looking for from a pitching perspective, I guess we'll see as they begin to make more moves in that regard. Again, offseason is still very young and the winter meetings are coming up next week. So it'll be interesting to see, given that he specified that pitching, especially starting pitching, is an area where they need to improve this team. It'll be interesting to see what moves he and Burns go out and make to restock this Colorado Rockies team. And it might give us some hints about how they intend on restocking this prospect system in the Colorado Rockies organization as well. So it'll be very interesting to see how Burns brings the key principles from his successful tenure as the Dodgers SVP of baseball operations to Colorado as the man who will be making a lot of the personnel decisions in the general manager role. So very interested to see how that plays out. But I think there's a good reason for optimism. I actually think this is the first time I've looked in comment sections related to the Colorado Rockies and seen mostly positive comments. So it seems like Rockies Nation generally received this move well, as they should have with DePodesta and with some of the other moves that have been made recently, but especially with Josh Burns' hiring. And so that's good to see. A guy who is well received in Colorado is obviously a good sign, and we'll see what he and DePodesta can cook up over the course of this offseason to help this Rockies team take that next step forward into 2026. So excellent GM hiring for the Colorado Rockies. I don't see any questions in the Q&A. So unless anything has popped up, we will sign off for today. Thank you for listening to this week's rendition of Hoops and Homers. We hope you enjoyed this discussion over at 5280 Media. Again, if you're not subscribed, go ahead and do so. And you know where to find us right back here next Saturday at 11 a.m. sharp. Have a fantastic week. And we'll see y'all then.